Hey guys, I'm gonna do a quick series video on the internet because I wanted to talk about kind of like how the internet, the way that we connect with each other, has kind of changed over time, and kind of like where we're at right now. Because I feel like, especially for people trying to start a business, especially for people trying to promote a business, for people trying to get work or get jobs, and they're finding it difficult in their local market. I feel like the internet is really, getting a basic understanding of the internet is really crucial in being competitive kind of in this day. Obviously, there are two ways of going about things. You can be, connected and commercial and very modern, and there are still companies out there that are doing it the other way, which is very kind of grassroots, where they are trying to have a specifically local impact. But both businesses can still benefit from using the internet because even if you're not working in a more globalization style kind of thing where you're working with sending packages or services around the globe, even if you're just working locally, you can still benefit by building forums, building places on the internet where your community can actually talk with each other, exchange information, exchange ideas, support each other in a more communal sense. So I still feel like the internet has a lot to offer for any kind of business these days, and that if you use it properly, it can really expand and really improve the way that you can communicate with the people that you'd like to communicate with. So, first things first, I wanted to talk about just a basic thing about how the internet is currently working, and how it's going to be changing in the next couple of years. So first thing, I've been doodling, but first things first is just in general, the hardware part. I don't know if honestly, I don't know if really that many people don't understand how it works, but I figured I might as well do it. So first things first, your computer is hooked up to a plug in the wall, and so you pay for that cable maybe, but for the rest of the journey, the cable, the property, actually belongs either to what they call an internet service provider, an ISP, like might hear names like Verizon or AT&T, but usually they'll own at least some portion of this, cable and the property and the boxes and all of that stuff. And then somewhere along the way, it might actually turn into cables that belong to the government or belong to other governments, and then other, ISPs as you go along. In this country, there might be an ISP that has a different name because it's run by a different company. So, and then it basically follows the same journey, down through some cable lines. Sometimes it's above ground, sometimes it's, underground, and then it hits somebody else's computer. And I mean, that's the basic hardware part of it. I personally don't know enough about like the actual programming and coding side to tell you really what happens in terms of like the most basic level of how you're actually communicating with each other. But essentially what they do is they take files or emails or whatever, they take the total of it, and then what they do is they break it down into little tiny packages. They take those packages and they add identifying codes to it so that they don't get lost and so they don't get put back together out of order. And then they send those small packages, little package by package, and they send it through the internet to the other side of the world. But the one thing I want to talk about and how it's changing is none of that part is changing. Essentially, as I understand it, at least, as I understand it, that is not changing. The basic way in which we send information to each other has not changed. I don't know if it is going to change. I mean, we've obviously made improvements in how secure it is, how quickly we can send that information. They call that like the bandwidth or the speed with which you can send a certain volume of information. But The other part that I really believe is going to be changing drastically is the way in which transactions happen, the way in which information is shared, the way in which I guess you could say the core system of how information is stored, how it's recalled, how people communicate with each other, how people trade with each other. A lot of that is about to change very drastically, and that's because we're coming up with something that basically, in a very simple way, changes the person that ends up in the middle between these transactions and exchanges information. Right now, there's a lot of companies that are out there that their purpose and their intention is actually to provide a service for which you either pay them money or you pay them part of your information, like for instance Facebook, or Gmail, or maybe even FedEx, or these different kinds of companies out there that charge you a fee for using their service, and in exchange they play kind of like a middleman role. And essentially, when you're handing them your money, you have to actually trust, obviously, that first of all they're not just going to take your money and run, but secondly that they're going to provide this certain quality, certain level of service that you're looking to buy. And there's obviously convenience involved, and it really depends on how convenient, how secure, and how cheap their services are as to whether or not you go to them. But what's changing is they're coming up with a certain way of safely protecting your information inside a program, and using that what they call it, like encryption, and along with a certain way of organizing a system of like networks, basically, which is basically like a lot of different people all sharing the same information, broken up enough size for like a computer to hold, your average computer, and they all share that information and they all check it with each other, and essentially they run a network just on the internet through storage on their computer, running like a program, and you don't actually have to have a middleman. And actually, crazy enough, you don't even really have to have a physical single storage unit somewhere, because that's the thing that's really changing now. Is right now, if you were to talk about like something like Google, they own cloud storage, and they're going to actually have a physical hard drive somewhere that has your information on it. And the difference between the way that it's now and the way it's going to be is there won't be one physical location for your information anymore. It's actually going to be stored on encrypted, like in a way that we can't break anymore. We've figured out a way to change the information in such a way that you can't change it back without a very, very special, unique code that usually well, I'll get into that later. I think that's a little too much right now. Anyways, so right now it works kind of like this. So you have, say you have money and you want to buy something, like a package of something. You're going to send your money on the internet through like a portal like Visa or MasterCard, and they're going to take that money and they're going to send it to the company like FedEx. And FedEx is gonna take, or sorry, like I don't know, Etsy or something, right? So Etsy. So you send your money to Etsy. Etsy holds on to your money and tells this other person to send what it is you've purchased. So once they tell that other person to send what you've purchased, they're going to put it in the mail, take a shipping code, right? You've done this before. It's like on Amazon. They send it through the mail, they give you the tracking package, and once it's shipped, typically that's how they usually do it, That's their kind of little trust system. Sorry about the cars. Um, their little trust system. Once they send it, then the company takes your money and gives it to this person, right? So that's how it works pretty much for the most part right now. The way that we're designing improvements to this is now, um, now a actual computer program run by a lot of different people's computers, all kind of storing it in a safe way, like a hidden way. They will actually take your money, put it in what's called like an escrow, which if you've ever bought a house or if you've ever looked at loans or any of that, an escrow is like basically it's like what's the word? It's like, well, I guess honestly, it's just an electronic, it's like a place where your money goes there and it sits tight, sits still for a minute until there's sufficient proof that the transaction has actually taken place. The product has been delivered to the person who purchased it, and then that money that's sitting, in the little escrow box, basically, once a certain number of items have been fulfilled, like a contract, like say, a truck delivered, 15 boxes of this product to an address in New Jersey, and like once those specific terms are fulfilled, then the escrow automatically, because it's like a program, automatically releases the money and it gets sent to the person who sold the item. So that's my basic explanation. And so there's a lot of implications, and that's what I really wanted to get into in the next video, because this changes a lot of stuff for us as people who buy stuff, as people who run businesses and sell stuff, and as people who have money. It changes a lot of stuff. And so if you can find a way to take a part of your business, not all of it, I'm not suggesting this, if you can find a way to take part of your business and try and understand how this new internet is working, try to study it, try to figure out ways in which you might be able to run your business on it, ways in which you might be able to sell products, communicate with people you want to work with or collaborate with. If you could start on this now, by the time this research and this technology is actually ready for the public, you'll be able to have a serious advantage, both in understanding and in basically having already kind of laid some groundwork for your business so that you can kind of hit the ground running. So that's my suggestion, is really check it out. It's called blockchain technology. So I'm going to write that out real quick. Blockchain, right there. So, and the reason it's called blockchain, I know it sounds kind of funny, is because how it works is, as far as the encryption is concerned, it's set up to automatically create what they call I think this is how it works, so sorry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they create a hash. And a hash is basically a really long string of numbers and letters set up to be very difficult to figure out as to how those numbers were created. And so it's basically like a very intense problem to solve. And what happens is, everybody that has a computer, that's it could be anybody, it could be you, it could be me, it could be some guy on the other side of the world, they all have a computer, they download a program that runs this software, and the software is basically allows their computer to solve, or at least attempt to solve, this problem of how this big long number was made. And funny enough, as a result of them doing this labor, this work, they actually kind of like move the transactions forward. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but basically lots of transactions will get sent to be verified, and they all get sent and packed up in a little tiny block, and basically once that block is filled up with transactions, it gets sealed up and it gets sent to the kind of like a forum for everybody to take a look at it. And once everybody is verified that they all see it, they all agree to how many transactions, and to each individual specific transaction, they all agree that it's the right ones, then it's sealed up and basically locked in, and nobody can ever go back and change it once a certain amount of time has passed. Usually like once a couple of other blocks have been made. And the reason it's called a blockchain is because these blocks are literally stringed together through time. So as time goes by, one is added on, like this, and then another one is added on, and then another one is added on. So that's why they call it a blockchain. But basically, you could take it out, go online, you can Google, obviously you can YouTube videos, that's what I'm making here, but I'm also going to be kind of expanding on this topic in my next video, mostly in a social way. I don't want to get into the technological way because I'm still learning about that aspect, and it's kind of hard to explain. It's very complicated technically, unless you're some kind of a computer person that programs and like does admin and stuff. Probably isn't going to make that much sense to you. So I figured just a basic understanding is all the average person really needs in order to start thinking about socially and culturally how this is going to have an impact on their business or on their personal life or on a daily basis. Buying stuff at the store, all of that stuff is going to change very, very drastically. So I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was kind of heavy in terms of explanations and stuff. The next video I'm going to make, I'm going to put a link at the bottom in the description. The next video I'm going to make is going to be much, much less technical, much more about the social side of what this is doing, much more about how this is going to be on a practical level, how this is going to change either your business or your personal life, and I'm excited about that part. So I really hope you take a look at it, and I hope this video has helped kind of increase your level of understanding. If you have any questions, if I did a poor job, let me know. I'd love to answer any, questions in the comments. I'm still learning, so if you have something you want to say, maybe you want to correct something I said, if maybe you've been inaccurate, I'm still learning, so please comment below, and we can kind of help anybody else who's watching this kind of come to a more clear understanding of this. So peace.